So here we go on 1938, the last not so interesting year. As far as the history of it all goes, a couple of cool things happened in 38, just aside from political events, maybe to give you a sense of cool stuff that happened in that year. Superman made his debut in 1938. That was the beginning of him. And Lou Gehrig hit his last Grand Slam before ALS took away his abilities rather precipitously in the thereafter period. There were a couple other big things, like a bigger Zeppelins being launched. The Soviet Union evacuated its North Pole expedition, and the Olympics that didn't happen due to World War II was awarded to Finland because Japan, who, as you'll note, is at war, decided to give up the right to host the Olympics due to its being involved in an active war against China. I'm also going broke, you'll note. So we'll see how that all goes. Again, just researching pretty much all of this stuff that I can. And basically every kind of doctrine imaginable. So it's time to pump out these sort of more junky tank divisions. There we go. So they will just be popped out all in order like that. Not particularly worried about our financial situation because, hey, we'll just print more money later, right? It's not a big deal. What do we got here? Let's put... So, Beria was historically... After they shot Yezhov for being a Russian spy, they replaced him with Beria, who was a friend of Stalin's from a long time ago, from the Caucasus. Stalin wasn't Russian. Some people know that more now than in the past. Stalin was actually from Georgia, not the state in the U.S., and Lavrenti Beria was also from Georgia. He was also, for a period of time, assigned to Stalin's mother, who Stalin referred to as Kiki, and Beria was really good friends with her, at least well liked by her. But he also is well known for being kind of a brute who killed a lot of people. There were still political trials going on in the Soviet Union at the time. The military generals were all gone, but various politicians continued to kind of have a bad day of it. Alright, so we finished our Strat bomber here. I'm not going to get naval bombers, although in real life the Soviets did have naval bombers. Just not a whole ton of them, basically. And I would really only put them in like Leningrad and stuff, and there wouldn't be very much for them to do, really. So, political events are going to start firing off here because things start to happen pretty precipitously. I think February 23rd is the historical date for it, but we shall see. Also, there's that little war business going on. We have the Republicans, so that's pretty rare. But, yeah, so there goes the war. China is dead. Yeah, there we go. So China loses, not surprising for this game. In real life, like I said, they held out. But for some reason, since I got their finest hour, China just cocks the whole thing up and has no hope. Every single time, it seems. Submarine crew training advance. Alright. I think that's... Oh yeah, and that's all we'll mess around with that until 39. Though not terribly excited there. I'm gonna shift to light tanks because I want to get self-propelled artillery brigades. I also want to get heavy tanks at some point, just because. Oh, I got some IC popping in, and our first Cass bomber. So we got a bunch of those popping out, but it'll be a while before we lose enough IC to stop that tank production from making a huge difference. So we got delay doctrine. I want to look and see. Okay, so we're still fine there. Just keep building up the practicals on it. Radio detection equipment, so that'll enable us to research radar at some point. In the future. I don't really go in. A lot of people who play the Soviet Union like to do advanced construction engineering to build better roads, but I don't really build the better roads. So I just leave it as it is, crappy, pretty bad overall, but I really have no desire to fix it, and it feels to me like I could just build more troops instead, and that I would be better served doing that, because soldiers are pretty sweet, it turns out. Alright, so we'll just keep hacking away at these armored techs. So then we have the Lake Chasen incident, or Kazan. That happened out here by Vladivostok. And basically what happened is, during the war with China and everything, Japan tried to see sort of how prepared the Soviet Union was to defend this eastern region. It wasn't necessarily the Japanese government in Tokyo that decided to do that. It was sort of just some generals who had the authority to do that sort of thing, decided to test out the Soviet Union's wherewithal. And the Soviets eventually won the battle. It lasted for a while, off and on fighting. Also, it saw a lot of action in the fleet from Vladivostok, because it wasn't a full-blown war. It was just like an incursion. And they ended up winning, like I said, but not winning well enough. And Blücher, who was well regarded in the military, basically by everyone, and it is lauded as a good general by Zhukov in his memoirs, and Kuznetsov in his memoirs especially. But he was executed, and it was said that he was trying to help the Japanese by being an idiot, basically, and he was killed for that. Another person that really got a lot of attention out of this incident was a general named Stern, and he rocked a Hitler mustache too. And Stern was also a good friend of Kuznetsov, who, let me see if I can get you, no, I can't yet, because Viktorov hasn't been executed yet. He doesn't get executed in the game, but he did in real life. And Kuznetsov is an admiral. At the time he was in charge of the Far Eastern Fleet. He was a good friend of Stern's, as well as, let's see if I can get you a picture of him. Reichkov, Stern and Reichkov, and Blücher was also part of that group of friends, sort of, were all killed. And Kuznetsov, if you draw back to my older thing, last couple videos where I said that being made head of the Navy was pretty much you're gonna die soon, all of Kuznetsov's friends were executed, and then Kuznetsov was made head of the Navy. But he ended up surviving the war. So he was the exception to the rule. But Stern was really built up after that battle. He was a division commander for riflemen, and it was all well and good, basically, except he would eventually be killed as a traitor. Because another wave of military purges came on. Oh, we get another thing to talk about. The Anschluss of Austria. So Germany has annexed Austria. It increases their size pretty substantially. Down here, you've got Munchen and Wien, and that's Vienna, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm an idiot. Innsbruck was pretty big deal too. It had a famous theological college, which the Nazis shut down in that year. Basically, the Germans just crossed in, and Austria never fought. They were pretty much inundated with Nazism by that point, and wanted to join Germany. Multi-role fighter development. Good, good. So we'll get the tanks finished. And we'll continue to build. So once I get all these tank techs knocked out, I'm going to start to maybe think about leadership. Because we're going to knock our leadership quite a bit. If it were up to me, it would be knocked harder because, like, Stalin killed a bunch of generals, but it's not. That doesn't happen in this version of the game. Infantry technologies. So yeah, Austria was basically annexed immediately. There are a lot of really interesting pictures that come from that event. I'm one for historical photography. I would like to show them here, but basically all you need to do is type in Anschluss in Google, and that way I won't steal anybody's content or bog down their websites. So, but some people were happy about it. They were glad to be reunited with a greater Germany that seemed to be on the rise. And some people, you know, they wanted to stay an independent Austrian entity, which is understandable, I suppose. So we're just loading up Siberia with industrial capacity, which we've succeeded in doing. And we've also managed to build a ton of stuff. So we're going to build 2 strategic bombers and a bunch of multi-role fighters. Okay, so that should lock out our IC again for the time being. So that was the big event in here, and then the next big event in 1939 should be popping off pretty soon. Oh, we got our submarine torpedoes too. Famously, if you're familiar with the Soviet Navy in this period, their submarines did not have the best anti-aircraft armaments at the time. But it didn't matter because they were locked in by a giant mesh sheet and mines, so they didn't really go anywhere anyway. Some did manage to get out, but not a whole ton of them. Ideally, I would be running through land tech right now, but that doesn't give me as big of a payoff as being able to build self-propelled artillery soon. Okay, so now that we have a big old Air Force being built and some other stuff like that. Submarines are very cheap, by the way, in case you didn't see. They're cheap. I'm not going to build a whole ton of them right now. I'm just going to start building them. And we'll get the upgrades thing going because it's pretty expensive. Parliamentary scandal. So that's a negative event that's going to hold us back a little bit. You also see that we're going to start wearing our officer ratio pretty thin soon. Has it happened yet? Supply transportation. Nope, still no Munich event. Also in 1938, Mussolini did a lot of his stuff that doesn't get covered. So a lot of the time in the United States, at least in my experience growing up, we hardly ever talked about fascist Italy. And if we did, it was to talk about how Italy was slightly different from Hitler. But for all intents and purposes, a lot of his policies in 1938 were not very kind, shall we say. So they restricted Jewish people from practicing law. They took away their civil rights. Mussolini issued a proclamation on how not cool Jews and black people were. And it was in general not a good time to be a minority in Italy. Or at least one that stuck out. They didn't round them up and put them in camps, as far as I know, which is what the Nazis were doing, but still an unpleasant situation to be in. Okay, we need to start. Now we're just going to start pumping land tech. So we've got the little nation of Czechoslovakia here. Hitler's going to start complaining that, now if you'll look, these all have forts on them, and they're also pretty defendable. They're hilly, forests, rivers. It's a great place for defense. And obviously the Czech government, after World War I, built a bunch of defenses there against future incursion on all sides, because it's landlocked and it's surrounded by several different countries, if even more if you count Austria, who had dubious intentions towards them. But it just so happens that most of the people living in this border region around Austria and Germany were German speaking, and Hitler started agitating for their rights and saying that the Czech, in particular Czechs, were oppressing them, and Hitler started to demand that territory. Most of the nations that weren't Germany opposed that because they saw that that was the only way that Czechoslovakia could ever hope to defend itself against an aggressive Germany. So there's all those tanks being built. Delicious. There we go, the Treaty of Munich. So that's Czechoslovakia after the Treaty of Munich. You can see why most people didn't like the idea very much. Because that pretty strongly reduced Czechoslovakia in territory. And what happened in the Munich Agreement, if you're not familiar with it, is Mussolini, Hitler, France, Britain, led by Neville Chamberlain, I think Daladier, could be wrong about that, all show up. They don't invite the Czechoslovakian president, by the way, and they make an agreement to get rid of all of this. Now, the interesting part of all of this is that the USSR, Soviet Union, see it's very big, and France had an agreement that they signed in 1935 that if Germany ever tried to mess around with Czechoslovakia, they would declare war on Germany. France obviously neglected that treaty, and they also said that they had never really truly signed the agreement because their governments kept being changed all the time. They were a republic, but they could call for new elections, and they did so very often. And the problem that France had with the agreement overall is, as you can see, Germany and Russia or Soviet Union didn't share a land border. Poland would not allow Soviet troops to go through it. The Soviets had worked out a tentative agreement with Romania. People are Steam messaging me a lot. Okay, and so, yeah, the Soviets had tentative agreements to rail transport troops into Czechoslovakia, which is technically a hostile act by Romania but they don't share a border with Germany, so, you know, what are they going to do about it? As long as the Soviet Union didn't lose so badly in Czechoslovakia that German troops ended up in Romania, they didn't have anything to worry about it. They also had tentative permission from Hungary in 35 anyways, before they became a dictatorship led by fascists, to use their airfields, and you can see some of those are modeled in the game. But in all, it was not to be. Stalin actually sent President Bene, I think is how it's pronounced anyway, sent him a telephone call and said, would you want us to try to keep the pact anyways? Because Stalin was very interested in not having Hitler in Europe at all. And he said, no, don't worry about it. And it was pretty obvious. Neville Chamberlain gets off the plane, says, I've secured peace in our time and all that. But Hitler definitely had designs on the rest of Czechoslovakia. And it was just lying there naked for him, so, like, how could you not? The cookie jar is wide open. And also, the Czech government was thrown into complete disarray when the governments that were supposed to be their friends gave away a huge portion of their country and made them indefensible militarily. So as you can see, their capital's basically already encircled by Germany with a small little highway linking it with Slovakia. So you gotta get those armor techs going. Integrated support. Okay, don't need to worry about that. More tanks getting done. That's good. So we're gonna focus in late 38 after we get all these tanks dumped. Okay, so we got all these tanks dumped out. And we're starting to assemble our Air Force. I'm going to add another run of tactical bombers. And more CAS bombers. And more multi-role fighters. And shove the rest into upgrades and other stuff. Now in this time period is when a lot of players would start building their road networks. If you're gonna do it, if that's something that you would want to try to do, now would be the time. If you were gonna try to mimic my playstyle. So basically, like what you would do is build roads all through here to keep your troops supplied, particularly the border with Poland. You would want to beef that up. It'd give you a slight advantage on your side anyways. But it also helps the Nazis if they end up taking that area, which they probably will. So, on the note of submarines, that's the end of us upgrading submarines. We will never do it again. Also, we're gonna build some marine divisions. So we'll throw... Nah, actually. No, yeah, that's a fine idea. So we're ticking away, starting to lose my my resources here. If I wanted to fix my resource situation, I could throw a bunch of diplomats into the pool. There's also the myth that H.G. Wells read his thing, his War of the Worlds novel on the radio and caused a bunch of people to think the world was ending. It's not really the case so much. But it makes for a fun story, doesn't it? That people were ultra panicked because of a book being read on the radio. And it's meant, in this game it notes that it's meant to highlight, like, how scared everybody was that modern society seemed to be coming to an end because there was so much turmoil. And after World War I, everybody had kind of made a promise to themselves and everyone else that they would never do something so stupid ever again, and here it was. They were about to do something that stupid again. So I just keep dropping these guys in their airbase in Moscow. I realize it's very supply inefficient to not have these guys cored up and stuff already, but I have 90,000 supplies and I'm not putting any effort into it whatsoever. So, like, there's no reason for me to be concerned. Medium tank engine upgrade. So we're just gonna keep boosting our bombers here a little bit early, but I am building or intending to build quite a lot of them, so okay, there we go. Did I sign those to be... No, good. Okay, whew. A little scary there. We'll put some more casts down. Some more multi-role fighters down. There, that should suck up all the problems. And scooch the upgrades down a little bit. Oh, it turns out I've got more than that, so we'll build another wing attacks. Still too much. So we'll build some more tank divisions. And that should be that. We'll build some moto rifle too, because I got nothing better to do with myself here, so our upgrade or our reinforcements are about to where they need to be. I'll just set it at 0.05 for the rest of peacetime. Oh, and I've still got see, this is the benefits of a volunteer army, is I am just blasting stuff off the production line. And we'll continue to do so for a little while. You know what? Let's get an interceptor out here. There we go. That should pretty much sate my appetite for an Air Force mass assault advance. Cool, cool. Kind of a shame I didn't put any in central planning, because we might need that, but we'll get it eventually. We'll start on mechanized offensive, because I will need that in the coming days. And a technology. We need a 1939 technology. Superior firepower is pretty cool overall, so why not get it? But then again, we could use engineer upgrades, so we're gonna snatch that real quick. And we've already got our tactical equipment upgrades. Medium tank reliability is down, away. There we go. And heavy tank brigades are in. As you can see, we don't have anybody new. And we're getting to a close here. Central planning. Upgrading rapidly because of practicals. And that will be nearly the end of 38. So a lot of different building. You can see I'm trying to build up a rather strong Air Force. And that'll present interesting challenges. But I know a lot of people just like to really stack army. And again, I am kind of doing that. But You could stack army, but I really like using air power. It provides us with something a little bit different to do. It may be a little bit more interesting to play around with. And that'll end 1938. So, in summary, Japan defeats nationalist China, loses the Olympics anyway to be held in Finland at a later date. And, another thing that happened in 1938 too, Ethiopia, the possession thereof by Italy, was recognized as legal by the United Kingdom. So, ironic and sad, really, for the Ethiopians who resisted as best they could. And so the fateful year of 1939 will be around the corner. I have a few preparations to make just in case something goes awry, because it's possible for ahistorical things to happen, so I need to make sure we're prepared for that. And the reason for that is because my very first Hearts of Iron Let's Play, that was like my first video, ended up getting wrecked because Germany went ahistorical and attacked me immediately after I took Poland, and it kept doing it when I reloaded, and I wasn't prepared at all for that, so I just immediately lost. So, so we're going to be prepared against that eventuality. But I hope you found it enjoyable, maybe a bit informative, and until next time.